Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome dark pop artist Cera Gibson to the podcast. Cera released her debut EP, Pink Soak, back in March. Cera talks about music as healing from purity culture, the balance of being true to her vision while dealing with sexism and unwanted advances, the downside of going viral, the musical inspirations on Pink Soak, and a lot more. I enjoyed this conversation a lot, and even if you don't like pop music, I think it's worth your time all the same. If I had to try to sum up Cera's musical vision and kind of what it reminds me of, I was thinking today that it reminds me of Hayley Williams' solo record, which I loved a lot. So if that is your vibe, check it out. And if you enjoy the song clips you hear in the episode, go check out Cera's music. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks for listening. I would love it if you subscribed to the podcast feed. If you came for Cera, we are not usually a pop-centric podcast, but you never know when you'll discover a band or an artist that you love that might be outside of your normal musical bubble. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com to our mailing list, our Discord server, and our Patreon page, where $1 a month gets you early access to every episode. Enjoy today's conversation with Cera Gibson.
I can fuck me better than you ever would. Ever come and look my way. Begging for affliction, had you burning in the kitchen, posted on my plate. I found God in the elevator spinning when I took your guide. Going down on me and living for it, I found God.
I'm doing pretty well. I've been busting my booty working on a show that comes up in 2 weeks, so I only slept like 3 hours, but I'm alive.
That's good. That's good. You're up in Utah?
I am, yeah, in the Salt Lake Valley.
Yeah. Is that where you grew up?
Mostly, yeah. I'm originally from North Carolina. Yeah.
Okay. Did you move up pretty young or like?
Yeah, I was super little. I just kind of straddled North Carolina and Salt Lake for a while, so I didn't claim Salt Lake as like my home for a long time, but it definitely is my home.
Yeah. What took you to Salt Lake? Just job opportunities or?
Well, it was my dad's job opportunity. Right? Yeah. My dad got a job out here, and so we came out a million years ago, and we've been here ever since.
Nice. What was growing up like?
Oh man. It was interesting. I mean, I was Mormon. So, very interesting in that sense, but I'm happy to be an adult.
That's so funny. Yeah, I have like some base awareness of Mormonism from just like studies, but like I grew up like Protestant, like non-denominational Christian. So like all I like young, it was like Mormons were a cult, and so like
totally
that was it for a long time until I like left and started reading and shit.
I mean, I'm not to be too derogatory, but there are cult aspects to it for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't think people are necessarily wrong about that. It's not the drinking the Kool-Aid kind of cult.
Sure.
But
yeah.
It's its own brand.
Yeah. What got you into music? Were you like a musical theater kid? Was performing always something you were interested in?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I mean, from as long as I can remember, I loved music. According to my mom, I don't remember this super well anymore. But when I was 3 years old, I was very into The Wizard of Oz, still am. And I wanted to be Dorothy. And so I would grab a potato and go outside and sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Nice.
Every day. It was a ritual. So I think that's probably where my love of music started. And then my dad's a musician. My older brother's a musician. I'm in a very artistic family. So the environment was rife for me to become an artist.
Yeah. How is like, I don't know, having creative impulses in the Mormon church, how do those things kind of interact, if at all? Because I know like on the Christian side, like they're very much at odds, right?
Oh, totally. Well, man, it was hard because in the Mormon church, it's a very sterile kind of environment. That's the best way that I can kind of put it, is there are a lot of insanely musically talented people, but when it comes to like individual artistry, you don't actually have a ton of that. And so when I was developing myself as a person and as an artist, I kept finding that my inclinations personally and musically were coming up into conflict with like the doctrine and the Mormon culture all the time. And so that was an interesting additional element onto my childhood and my development, was just filtering everything through the lens of like, is this acceptable within my Mormon community?
Yeah. Yeah, which I'm sure is frustrating. At what point does like the desire or impulse or decision to like pursue music or creativity as like a profession or job or hobby enter your life?
Okay, well, like I said, from a very young age, I was doing music. It was around 17. I'd been writing songs for maybe like 4 years at that point, but around 17, I started to think, man, I really want to do this as my career. And it's so funny because growing up, I always wanted to be an actor or a director. I was very musical and I loved music, but that was the particular mode of artistry that I thought I was going to go into.
Gotcha.
But when I got a little bit older and I realized that I was actually good at music, that it was like my main passion, it was where I poured all of my emotion into, I thought, yeah, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And thankfully, my parents saw that same potential in me. So they were very encouraging. I mean, there were some challenges because of the Mormon aspect. So there were a lot of limitations on what I was able to do and how I was able to express myself, but they were so encouraging of it. They were definitely not the parents that were like, no, you're going to go get a sensible job. They're like, no one here has a sensible job, so do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, from listening to your music, you have broken out of the Mormon culture, and how much of like I don't know how much like purity culture or restrictive the Mormon faith is for girls and women. Like how much of that, and I don't know, maybe a repressed sexuality as a teenager kind of comes through in your music now, or has influenced the direction you want to take your music?
That's a really good question. I would say purity culture is a massive influence on me even to this day, and not even necessarily so much in like the negative aspects that it brought to me when I was younger. It's more so about my own healing and like transmutation of that trauma, for lack of a better term. And that really inspires my artistry. So I think it's really important, just for me personally, to be as sexually and openly liberated as possible. And I want to not just do it for the sake of being seen and like getting attention, but doing it because it's like a genuine part of what it is to be human. And I want to connect with people, not just through like shared emotion, but through like shared sensuality, I guess, that sensuality that we all have. And growing up with that being so repressed, you become so acutely aware of it in a way that maybe other people aren't. And the importance that it actually plays in your life, especially the importance of having a healthy relationship with that part of yourself.
Yeah. I've often thought over, I don't know, the last 10 years or so, like if religious communities were more open about honest conversations about sexuality outside of just like, don't do it. Like, everybody would be a lot better and a little less fucked up, right?
I completely agree. I feel like you can hold whatever values and beliefs that you have as long as it's not hurting people, but you do need to be able to have that conversation, just be normal about it and talk about it. Because when it becomes that taboo and repressed, I feel like so much more harm comes out of that. And if an adult is fully educated and they have all the information they need and they decide, well, I'm going to save myself for marriage still, then that's great. But I don't think that should be imposed upon anyone, you know?
Don't make it serious, it's just the eclipse, bringing my hunger for you to the surface. No disrespect, but darling, I'd be remiss if the moon were to pass without the warmth of your lips. Hiding in plain sight, you don't need the reason to be here. Come in while the sun is high, for the light disappears. You can't blame the sky, blame the signs while you're laying in.
I've tried to think about the best way to ask this question, and I don't think I've come up with it.
Okay.
Because I think there's some conversations happening in pop music space with some of the bigger artists about the sexualization of pop stars. That's always been there. And I think there's been a lot of conversation about Sabrina Carpenter remaking herself. How do you find striking a balance between being true to your artistry and what you want to say and presenting this image, while also not putting up with, you know, the bullshit of men? Like, I'm just gonna say men because we're shitty, like, right? And just like probably too many unwanted advances and lustful comments in your DMs, right?
Yeah, well, I have been on the internet as like a creator for a few years now since the pandemic. And so I am so used to it. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but to be honest, I kind of look at it as it comes with the territory. And that doesn't mean that I'm condoning it in any way. I'm not. If it was my perfect world, no one would ever ask me to rate their dick ever again in a DM. But I do kind of expect that kind of behavior, especially when you're putting yourself out to such a broad audience. And when it comes to the kind of music and art and content that I make, a lot of it is rooted in some level of sensuality or sexuality. And so I do get that kind of attention back. But what I think is most important for me is like my motivation in sharing that and what I'm trying to say by utilizing that as a means for art and communication. And so I feel like if I were to lean into it in a sense of like, look at me, like lust for me, give me attention, I think that would divorce me kind of from like my relationship with it. It would become more of like a commodity that people can consume and take from me. And so for me, that's really not where I'm coming from. I'm like, this is authentic to me. I'm communicating it to you to genuinely reach you in some way, whether it's like artistically or it's comedy or what have you. And for that reason, none of the weird objectifying stuff really bothers me at all anymore. But yeah, there's a balance. I think it just comes to with like, why are you doing it?
Right. Yeah. You are most known probably for a viral video. You wrote a song about it. How has that kind of changed your online relationship, whether it's with people who view your videos or people who discover you through that? Like, I know social media creation and being on TikTok and doing dumb shit has really infiltrated music in a way that is unhealthy, and a lot of smaller artists are trying to get attention in whatever way they can, sometimes at the detriment to their music. Has being a viral sensation, if you will, impacted how you present yourself or the type of people who come to you?
Oh, yes. Yes, that video created like this crazy domino effect for me personally. When it blew up 2 years ago, I mean, my world exploded, and I'd been going viral for a while, but there's a difference between like 10 million views and like 1 billion views. You know what I mean? That's a huge difference. They're light years apart. And so suddenly I'm getting this crazy influx of attention and followers and press and celebrities are following me. And I'm like, oh my God, I did it. It's my big break, you know? And it's so wild because In the months that followed, yes, a lot of opportunities came from that, but my audience took this incredibly harsh shift. So my audience had always been predominantly women. They were people that were there for every aspect of me. So like comedy and music and whatever else I decided to pull out of my hat. And when that video blew up, my audience went from like 70% women to like 75% men. It was crazy. And the atmosphere in my comments completely changed. I continued to be myself. I'm also very like socially active in terms of like speaking about causes that I'm passionate about. And so a lot of the causes I'm passionate about are women's causes because I'm very close to that. And so I would speak about women's issues. I also have a little bit of a harsh way of speaking sometimes. And this male audience would hear that and they would just lose it. They're like, I thought you were for men. I thought you were for the betterment of men. And so they would just tear me to shreds. And there was this huge like shift in the attitude towards me. So all these men love me. I told them their average wiener is great. And I still stand by that. But I tell them that. I make them feel good about themselves. And then suddenly they're seeing the entirety of me. And the entirety of me is very loving of men, but also incredibly critical of men. And also not trying to appeal to them. So I'm going to say and do things that are, you know, not interesting or maybe are an affront to their sensibilities, who knows? And so this huge shift happened where suddenly I'm getting like, I'm not even joking, like tens of thousands of hate comments, just telling me to kill myself, telling me they're going to assault me, all of this stuff. The most graphic things, people are trying to dox me. Someone did successfully dox me, but I got it taken down. And it was just very overwhelming. And a big part of me, I've always been like, oh, I don't care what anybody thinks. And like on a fundamental level, yeah, I don't. And that wasn't even really necessarily the problem. It was more that immense level of hatred coming towards you, even if you don't care what they're having to say, that will affect you.
Yeah.
And when I started posting music and stuff again, all these same dudes are like, I don't care about this, like talk about dicks, show us your tits, whatever. And sorry if I can't swear.
You can, yes.
Oh, okay. But they're like, show us your tits, whatever. And that became very depressing because I was like, wow, I finally got this insane visibility and it's hurting my art.
Yeah.
That's so crazy because I didn't make that video to bring attention to my art. I just had a funny idea. And that's where a lot of my videos came from in the past was like, I just have a funny idea. Yeah. There was no like, I'm using this to co-promote my music. In fact, they lived parallel to one another in a lot of ways. And so in that process, I really realized I was like, oh my God, what I'm putting out into the world might be getting me a lot of visibility and attention, and it might be totally valuable in terms of entertainment, but is it serving what I want to do with my life? And is it attracting the audience that's going to be most beneficial for me and my music? And the answer to that was no, it's not doing that. It's hurting it actually, because I would even talk to big agents in the industry and stuff, and they would be like, we love you, but you should just be a comedian because that's clearly working. And it was like, oh my God, I don't want to be a comedian. Yeah. And I'm just a funny girl. That's all it is. I'm not trying to do that professionally. Right. And so that really catalyzed me to take a big look at myself. And honestly, last year, so like a year after the video, I had this crisis of self of like, what am I doing? This is wild. I've been doing this for so long and it's starting to feel a little bit demoralizing. And that was just a really good sign of like, where are my priorities? Where do I need a shift? And so now I'm in this place of like, I don't really care to be seen in that way. I think I just want to be artistic and authentic. And if that gets me seen, which it does sometimes, then that's fabulous. But if it doesn't, I can't sacrifice what I know is good for me just to be seen and quote unquote successful. And when I really think about it and I listen to my intuition, I'm like, no, that's the right thing to be doing. And I think that will ultimately lead success in whatever form that looks like. But yeah, to answer your question, that video changed everything.
For better and for worse.
For better and worse, yeah. But that's how most things are.
The tension rises as I open the door. We retrace our footsteps like each time before. Said you're just passing through, but you know the score. And I was born for you to adore. Hiding in plain sight, you don't need a reason to be here. Come in where the sun is high for the light.
You just put out this EP, Pink Soak. I assume, maybe wrongly, that this is a sexual reference.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. All right. Right on it. Talk to me about kind of the writing process and maybe your musical influences, because it's a very dark vibe on the EP from
Thank
a
you.
musical perspective.
Yeah, it is very dark. I tend to lean towards darker musicality. I always have. I think it's because I listened to so much grunge and metal growing up.
Okay.
And those are the primary genres I listen to, including like goth rock and stuff. So that bleeds in, even if it's not a direct influence, into the way that I write and approach music. But Pink Soak, actually, all of those songs were originally meant to be singles because I was going to do the whole like, you put out a single and you push that with a bunch of viral videos and then you put out another single. And when I was listening to the songs in their entirety, which they're songs from the past like 2.5 years. So they've been sitting for a minute now. When I was listening to them in their entirety, when I was kind of going through this little bit of a crisis last year, I thought, no, this is a complete body of work. And I want them all to live together on this like perfect little package as an EP. And that's what I decided to do, because even though the songs are really quite different from one another, I feel like they all have this similar internal thread and they're coming from such a similar place and tell a cohesive story. And yes, they're pretty sensual. Some of them are just like outright sexual, but I also think they're so infused with a very like deliberate emotion. Yeah. That I like the different shades of sensuality that the EP presents. Like it feels very divine feminine.
Yeah.
And musical influences for the EP specifically, it's kind of hard to say because I listen to so much stuff. Mm-hmm. But I was feeling very inspired by like choral arrangements when I was putting this together, and my like musical partner / best friend, she's an insane vocalist and a wizard with harmonies. And so there's a handful of songs on there where she did these incredible stacked harmonies on there. I did them and then she did them even better, doubled them. And so it just has like this, some of them have this massive vocal feeling where it just like overwhelms you.
It's a well laid out EP starting with I Found God, which is ethereal and electronic, to I can't remember if it was Come Down or Got Me Back, that has like more of, it's not a metal song, but it's very driving and hits you before like Eclipse is like, I don't know, the crescendo of the whole thing. So it is well paced.
Thank you. That was really important to me. I feel like album sequencing is a lost art. And for me, I'm like, the few people that listen to this top to bottom, I want them to have a cohesive, interesting journey to go on. But yeah, I think it's You Got Me Back that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are so many albums these days where I'm like, the songs are good, but if you would just rearrange them, it would make more sense. But I get why people don't give a shit about that as much these days.
I get it too. I do.
Yeah. Was there any specific inspiration for the cover photo?
So that was actually originally going to be the cover for Friends, because that was going to be a single. That was actually going to be the next single after Eclipse. And then I pivoted And when I was thinking about how I wanted to put together this body of work, because I was also thinking, well, maybe I add a few more songs that I've been working on and I make it an album. And I still have an album name that I'm saving for later. But ultimately, I decided that I would combine them. And when I was looking through like all the photo shoots that I already had, I was looking at that picture and I'm like, that just feels like the songs. Like when I listen to the songs, that like, again, not to overuse this word, but it's like sensual, but it's also so moody and like dark. And there's the rain, which makes you, it's emotional almost. It's like sensual and emotional. And so I felt like that was perfect for it. And really the name for the EP was inspired by the photo and what the photo made me feel. Gotcha. So yeah, that's how that all came together.
Gotcha. It almost has a Flashdance vibe to it. You said you have a show coming up. What's your plan for this year and kind of how you present your music with so much of the music industry being online? And like, I don't know that there's a lot of dark pop, if you will, happening in public. Like, what's your plan for what you want with this album and EP and this upcoming year?
Very good question. Well, you're completely right. Yeah, there's not a lot of dark pop happening in the mainstream or really at all. And it's so funny because when I'm running ads and stuff and we're trying to tailor the demographic, it's always like, dang, if this was just like a dance pop album, this would be so much easier. But I find my audience, and that's really important to me, is just to stay true to what naturally comes to me as an artist. And for this EP, I decided I'm still going to make my silly internet videos, but less so. And my focus is on making really cool visuals that just speak for themselves. So there's going to be a music video for every single song on the EP. I put out the one for I Found God on the drop day, and Eclipse is already out. That was at South by Southwest, but there's 4 more coming down the pipe. And I'm just really excited about those. I'm excited about leaning into my artistry, sharing that with people, and hopefully they enjoy it the way they've enjoyed I Found God and Eclipse. And with the show on the 18th, that's like a secular queer worship show with a choir of 12 people, where we're singing these pop culture songs like Judas by Lady Gaga, Christian Woman by Typo Negative in these crazy choral arrangements. And what I wanted to do with that is kind of the message of the I Found God video, is just like give people a space to feel that human connection that sometimes church takes responsibility of, without those religious themes, but not without the themes of like faith and loss of faith and all of those. So that's like an extension of I Found God and the EP.